I've lived in the same building for 2 years now, but I only started noticing her about 6 months ago. Noticing is the wrong word, maybe. It's not like she was invisible before. She was always there, a floor below me, coming back with grocery bags balanced on her arms, or standing by the mailboxes sorting envelopes with a kind of distracted patience. But 6 months ago, something shifted. It happened at the laundromat, of all places. The kind with humming dryers and folding tables that wobble if you lean too hard. I was trying to coax a machine into swallowing my last crumpled bill when she walked in, carrying a thermos and a laundry bag that looked too heavy for her. She gave me this small half-smile, the kind people give to say, "I see you, but let's not make a big deal out of it." "Machine number 5 eats dollars," she said, tapping the lid of her thermos against the coin slot. Her voice was calm, like she'd been here enough times to know all the machines by temperament. "Good to know," I mumbled. My voice cracked a little, so I looked down, pretending to smooth a wrinkle in my t-shirt. She nodded toward number 3. "That one's merciful." That was it. Nothing movie-like, nothing anyone else would remember. But I remember. I remember because I spent the next 40 minutes pretending to scroll through my phone while stealing glances at the way she folded shirts, precise, slow, almost like she was memorizing them. Since then, we've had small moments. Once in the hallway, when she held the door open and asked if my headphones blasting were saving me from my thoughts or adding to them. Another time at the corner coffee shop, when she ordered the same thing I always do, a plain drip, no sugar, no cream, and caught me staring. "You're one of those too," she said, lifting her cup like a quiet salute. "Guess so." My hands fumbled with the lid, nearly spilling. I think I muttered something about simplicity, but I'm not sure she heard. The thing about her is, she doesn't fill silence. Most people rush to bridge gaps with words, but she doesn't. She just lets them sit there. Like on the day we both stood waiting for the elevator, her holding a grocery bag with lemons pressing against the thin plastic, me holding nothing but my phone. The silence stretched, not in a bad way, more like a held breath. That night, I almost texted her. I'd somehow ended up with her number after a neighbor group chat about parking spaces. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, typing and deleting things like "Do you ever have trouble sleeping?" Or "What kind of tea is in your thermos?" I never sent them. The drafts are probably still there, tucked away like evidence of something I can't quite admit. Sometimes I wonder if she notices me noticing her. The way my eyes flick toward her hands when she adjusts her thermos lid, or the way I straighten up a little when she passes in the hallway. Maybe she does. Maybe that's why, yesterday, as I walked out of the building, she stopped me. "You left these by the dryers," she said, holding out my headphones. I hadn't realized I'd lost them. I took them from her, our fingers brushing for the briefest second. My chest felt too tight for such a small exchange. "Thanks," I said, too quickly. She smiled, softer this time. "Try not to lose the things that help you think." And then she walked away, leaving me standing there with my headphones tangled in my palm, and a thought I couldn't untangle in my head. Because when she said that, I swear it felt like she wasn't talking about the headphones at all. A week after the headphones, I found myself lingering in the hallway longer than usual, like the building itself had become a waiting room for chance encounters. It was late evening, lights dim, and she was struggling with a box outside her door. "Need a hand?" I asked, already reaching for it. She hesitated, then nodded. "Careful, it's heavier than it looks." It was full of old books. Hard covers with frayed spines, paperbacks swollen from years of being read near steam or rain. I carried it inside for her, stepping into her apartment for the first time. It smelled faintly of lemon and something herbal, maybe the tea she always carried in that thermos. "Living room," she said, pointing with her chin. I set the box down near her couch, where 2 cushions sagged as if someone always sat in the same spot. A mug sat on the table, tea gone cold. She caught me glancing and gave a small shrug. I always make more than I drink, she said. Habit. I smiled, though it came out crooked. My version of that is pouring cereal at midnight and then forgetting about it until it's mush. That made her laugh, quiet but genuine, and something in me leaned closer without moving at all. She began pulling books from the box, sorting them into uneven stacks. Most of these were my ex-husband's, she said suddenly, then paused, as if she hadn't meant to admit it. Her hands lingered on a spine before setting it down. I don't really know why I've kept them this long. I crouched to help, fingers brushing hers when we both reached for the same battered copy of The Old Man and the Sea. Neither of us commented, but my pulse jumped. I guess holding on feels easier than throwing away, I said. Her eyes flicked to me. There was something unreadable there, but not unkind. For a while we worked in silence, stacking, shifting, not talking. But it wasn't empty silence, it was thick, humming, like a low note sustained too long. I found myself imagining what it would feel like to sit here with her on nights like this, both of us too tired to fill the air with words, both of us letting the quiet do the work. And then, just as quickly, I felt the heat of guilt rise. She was in her 40s. I was barely past 20. Neighbor was one thing, anything else was impossible. People would notice. People would talk. Maybe she'd already thought of that, maybe that's why her pauses lasted longer than her words. When the books were stacked, she dusted her hands against her jeans and said, "Thanks. I would have been wrestling with that box all night." "Glad I walked by," I answered. As I turned to leave, she touched my arm. Just 2 fingers, light, meant only as a thank you. But it landed like a weight, a secret I didn't know where to put. And later, lying awake on my couch, headphones tangled beside me, I kept replaying it, the briefest brush of her hand, thinking, I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It never is. She was outside on the front steps, balancing her thermos on the railing while scrolling through her phone. Evening again. Street lamps flickering on one by one. "Hey," I said. She looked up, squinting a little, then smiled like she'd been caught mid-thought. "Hey." I sat down one step below her, not too close. Close enough to smell the tea, something floral. We didn't talk for a while. Just sat, listening to a neighbor's dog bark through a half-open window. Then she broke the silence. "You're usually out late on Fridays. Don't you have people?" I laughed softly, but it came out sharper than I meant. "I guess not. Or maybe I just don't keep them." Her eyes stayed on me a little too long, then flicked away. "That sounds lonelier than it probably is." I wanted to say it was lonely. That most nights I fall asleep with the TV still on, so it feels like something is there. But instead I said, "It's fine. I'm used to it." And she nodded, like she knew better than to push. The steps creaked behind us suddenly. A neighbor walking past, keys jangling, giving us a quick glance before disappearing inside. Something about that tiny interruption shifted the air. She straightened, sat back slightly, folded her hands together in her lap. Distance. I tried to recover it. "What's in the thermos tonight?" "Chamomile," she said, lifting it halfway, then stopping, like she'd almost offered me some but thought better of it. I nodded, staring at the steam curling from the lid. My hands tightened around my knees. Every part of me wanted to close the gap, but the silence now felt fragile, like glass. One wrong move and it would shatter. She started, then stopped. She tilted her head toward her door. "I should probably, you know." But she didn't stand. Not yet. And I didn't move either. My heart thudded louder than the traffic on the street. I caught myself staring at her profile, the curve of her mouth when she pressed it into a thin line, like she was holding something back. I leaned forward just a little. Too much. She noticed. Her eyes flicked to mine, then down, then away. A soft breath left her lips. For a second, the whole world narrowed, just the glow of the streetlight, the warmth of her shoulder inches from mine, the pulse of something I couldn't name filling the space between us. I opened my mouth. Do you ever? She cut me off gently, almost a whisper. Don't. Not harsh. Not cold. Just, careful. Her hand brushed against mine as she stood, not holding, not lingering, but not an accident either. And then she was gone, door closing with a quiet click that felt louder than it should have. I sat there a long time after, staring at her empty step, replaying the way she'd said don't. Wondering if it meant don't say it yet, or don't ever say it at all. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. The kind of gray sky that makes the whole street feel smaller, quieter. She was walking back from the corner store, paper bag tucked under her arm, when I caught up beside her. Need help? I asked. It's just tea and bread, she said, smiling faintly. But she didn't stop me from taking the bag. We walked the 2 blocks back together, steps falling into an awkward rhythm. She asked about work. I gave short answers. I asked about her weekend. She shrugged like it didn't matter. The pauses stretched, and every one of them felt weighted. At the front steps, neither of us went in. She sat on the railing instead, bag in her lap. I stood there, shifting my weight, pretending the silence wasn't pulling at me. Finally she said, I saw you with that girl the other night. By the bus stop. I blinked. Oh. That was just, she's in one of my classes. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, more like she was measuring me. You looked comfortable. The word stuck in the air. Comfortable. My chest tightened. It wasn't like that. She gave a small nod, but the corner of her mouth pressed down, betraying her. For the first time, I saw something close to jealousy flicker across her face. And it unsettled me, how much it mattered. I don't really, I started, then faltered. My hands gripped the railing. I don't really let people close. Her eyes softened at that. She shifted, set the bag aside, leaned just slightly toward me. That's not true. I laughed, sharp, nervous. How would you know? Because, she said, and then stopped. A pause so long I thought she might not continue. Her gaze slipped down to her hands, then back to me. Because you let me. The street around us felt too quiet, like everything had stepped back to listen. My throat tightened. You don't know how many times I've almost said, her head tilted, eyes steady. Said what? I couldn't. The words lodged there, heavy, dangerous. Instead I muttered, doesn't matter. But she didn't let me go that easily. She reached out, her hand resting on the railing between us, just close enough that if I shifted even an inch, my fingers would touch hers. It matters, she said softly. I stared at her hand. At the faint tremor in her fingers, like she was risking more than she wanted me to see. Everything in me leaned toward her, every pulse, every breath. My lips parted. And then the front door banged open. A neighbor came out, earbuds in, barely glancing at us as he jogged down the steps. The moment fractured. She drew her hand back quickly, folding it into her lap. I swallowed hard, staring at the ground. When I finally looked up, her eyes were on me. Searching. Waiting. And the question hung there between us, silent but undeniable. If I asked you to cross this line, would you? The days after that almost moment felt different. Not louder, not dramatic, just changed. I didn't see her on the steps anymore. Not at the mailboxes. Not at the laundromat. For someone who'd always seemed woven into the background of my routine, her absence felt like a thread pulled loose. At first, I thought it was timing. Wrong hours, missed overlaps. But then I noticed the small things. The thermos wasn't on the railing, her blinds stayed closed, packages lingered by her door longer than usual. And when I finally did see her, 3 days later, carrying groceries, she didn't slow when she spotted me. Just gave a quick smile, thin and polite, and kept walking. It landed harder than I expected. Like the air had cooled a few degrees. That night, I sat on my couch with my phone in hand, thumb hovering over her name in the neighbor group chat list. I typed, "You okay? Haven't seen you around." Deleted it. Typed, "Did I do something?" Deleted that too. What stuck in my drafts was a pathetic half sentence. I never finished it. Never sent it. The next afternoon, I caught a glimpse of her through the cracked door as I passed her apartment. She wasn't alone. A boy sat at her table, maybe 16 or 17, shoulders hunched over a textbook. He looked like her, same dark eyes, same stubborn jaw. Her son. I stopped mid-step, realizing what that meant. I hadn't asked. She hadn't told me. 100 small moments reframed themselves all at once, the way she lingered at the door, the careful pauses, the sudden withdrawals. Not just age. Not just neighbors. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting him. That night, my chest felt tight, not broken but suspended. Like I'd reached the edge of a sentence and the words never came. She knocked once, 2 days later. A soft knock. When I opened the door, she stood there with the thermos in her hand, as if it were a shield. "Sorry," she said, before I could speak. I'd been distracted. I wanted to ask distracted by what, by who. Instead, I nodded. "It's fine." Her eyes searched mine, as though checking if I believed her. Then she handed me the thermos. Chamomile. I made too much. I took it, fingers brushing hers again. Too brief. Too careful. And then she turned, retreating back down the hall before I could say anything else. Later, lying on the couch, thermos cooling on the table, I drafted another message. Just 5 words, "Do you want me here?" I didn't send it. I watched the screen dim, the words unsent, and thought, I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. And for the first time, I wondered if it ever would. It was late when it happened. Nearly midnight, the building hushed except for the hum of pipes and the faint thud of someone's TV upstairs. I'd gone down to toss trash, and when I came back up, she was sitting on the steps outside her door, barefoot, hair tied loose, a half-empty glass of water in her hand. She looked up like she'd been expecting me, though I knew she hadn't. Couldn't sleep? I shook my head. You either? She gave a small laugh. Sleep and I have an uneasy relationship. I leaned against the wall across from her, arms crossed. The hallway light buzzed faintly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't the good kind of silence this time, it was full, pressing, demanding something. Finally, she sighed and set the glass down. I should probably apologize. For what? For being inconsistent. Her hands rubbed at her knees, restless. Sometimes I pull you in. Sometimes I push you away. It isn't fair. I swallowed. My chest tightened. I figured you had your reasons. Her eyes flicked to mine. I do. A pause. Then, softer, my son. The divorce. The way people look at things they don't understand. I nodded slowly. Every word landed heavier than the last. And me, I said. The age gap. She gave a half smile, weary. You're too young to be the one worrying about that. I'm not worried about the number, I said quietly. I'm worried about what it means to you. Her expression shifted, something fragile breaking through the restraint. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, voice low. It means I can't pretend this is nothing. The air felt charged, like if either of us moved too fast, it would collapse. I wanted to say everything at once, how she was the only person I thought about at night, how her pauses meant more than other people's words, how I hadn't felt this seen in years. But the words tangled. Instead I said, I don't need it to be simple. I just need it to be real. She blinked, startled. Her hand stilled. The silence stretched long enough for me to think I'd said too much. Then she stood slowly, walked the few steps across the hallway, and sat down beside me against the wall. Close. Our shoulders touched, tentative but steady. She let out a breath that seemed to empty weeks of weight. You don't make this easy, she whispered. Neither do you. My voice cracked. For a long time, we didn't look at each other. Just sat, shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same dim hallway air. I felt her hand shift slightly on her knee, then brush against mine. Not holding. Just there. It was nothing, and it was everything. Finally, she turned her head, gave me the faintest, tired smile. Okay. That was all. Just okay. And somehow, it felt like the most dangerous and honest thing she could have said. Time didn't flip overnight. It stretched. Bent. Settled. Weeks passed. The air between us loosened, though it never lost that charged undercurrent. I saw her more often again, at the mailboxes, at the laundromat, at the corner coffee shop. Sometimes we didn't say much, just nodded like neighbors do. But the nods carried weight now. She still carried her thermos. I still drank my plain drip coffee. One morning, as I walked into the shop at 8:47 a.m., she was already there, sliding 2 cups across the counter. Yours, she said simply, no explanation. It became a rhythm. Small things that didn't look like much from the outside, a shared walk back from the store, her son waving as I held the door open, a folded napkin placed between us on the table where we both sat too long in silence. There were no confessions. No sudden declarations. Just a slow weaving of lives, like threads pulled tighter without us realizing until one day, it felt strange to think of them apart. One Sunday, she invited me in for tea. Not with hesitation this time, but like it had become inevitable. We sat on her couch, the sagging cushions giving under our weight. She poured chamomile into mismatched mugs and pushed one toward me. Too hot, she warned, blowing gently across her own. I pretended not to notice the way my chest tightened at that tiny, ordinary care. The TV hummed in the background, some show neither of us were watching. Her son was out, friends, maybe basketball. The apartment felt lived in, soft, imperfect. A stack of books we'd sorted weeks ago still sat by the wall, waiting for a shelf. We didn't talk much. Just sipped tea, let the silence stretch. But it wasn't fragile anymore. It was comfortable. A blanket instead of a knife's edge. She shifted slightly, leaning back, her shoulder brushing mine. This time, she didn't pull away. Neither did I used to think, she started, then trailed off. Her hand rested lightly against my arm. Never mind. I turned to her. Tell me. Her lips curved in that faint, tired smile I knew by now. I used to think I'd never let anyone sit this close again. I nodded. Took another sip. Didn't say anything back, because what answer could match that? The rest of the evening passed in small motions, her adjusting the blanket across the couch, me setting my mug down too carefully, both of us stealing glances when we thought the other wasn't looking. And later, when I stood to leave, she touched my wrist, not holding me, not stopping me, just enough to say you don't have to go so far anymore. I left anyway, but with something settled in me. On the couch that night, headphones tangled beside me, I thought about all the things we hadn't said, and how somehow, it was enough. And I knew, if anyone asked me where my mind slept, the answer would never change. It slept on her chest, even if my body never did.